You ever notice how often you swallow what you really want to say? You smile when your jaw is tight with anger. You nod along while something inside you is screaming, no. You apologize for taking up space, for needing time, for existing a little too loudly. You tell yourself it's maturity. You call it kindness. You convince yourself this is what good people do. But at 3 in the morning, when the noise dies down and there's nowhere left to hide, you feel it, that quiet, bitter truth sitting in your chest. This isn't kindness. It's fear. Somewhere along the way, you learned that being liked was safer than being real, that if you stayed agreeable, flexible, easy to deal with, the world would reward you. That approval was protection. That conflict was danger. So you adapted. You learned to read moods like weather patterns. You learned how to soften your edges, how to shrink your needs, how to keep the peace at your own expense. You became the reliable one, the understanding one, the person who never makes things difficult. And look at what it got you. Are you respected? Or are you exhausted? Because here's the uncomfortable question no one wants to ask. Why is it that the people who demand the most seem to get the best, while the ones who bend over backward end up drained, overlooked, and quietly resentful? Why is it that the peacemaker always loses? It's because you've been trying to buy respect with a currency that has no value. You're trading your power for a pat on the head. You're handing over your boundaries in exchange for momentary approval. And deep down, you already know the truth. Being liked doesn't protect you. It exposes you. 500 years ago, Niccolo Machiavelli saw this clearly. He wasn't interested in morality theater. He didn't care about appearing virtuous. He cared about results, about power, about survival in a world driven by human nature, not good intentions. And his warning still hits like a blade. Love, he observed, is maintained by obligation. An obligation breaks the moment it becomes inconvenient. Fear, on the other hand, is maintained by consequences, and consequences don't rely on goodwill. Now, before your defenses go up, let's be clear. We're not talking about intimidation or cruelty. Replace the word fear with something more accurate in everyday life. Respect. It is safer to be respected than liked. Likability is fragile. It disappears the moment you stop being useful, agreeable, or convenient. Respect is different. Respect has weight. Respect has gravity. Respect doesn't evaporate just because someone is in a bad mood or sees a better option. If you're honest with yourself, you've felt this difference before. Think about the people in your life who walk into a room and don't need to announce themselves. The ones who don't explain, don't justify, don't chase. They're not loud. They're not aggressive. But when they speak, people listen. When they say no, it sticks. That's respect. And if you don't have it, there's a reason. This video isn't about becoming cold or cruel. It's about removing a piece of programming that is quietly destroying your life. The need to be liked. Because the need to be liked is not a personality trait. It's a trauma response. It's something you learned when approval became linked to safety, when love felt conditional, when you realized that being easy was rewarded and being difficult was punished. So you became adaptable, flexible, invisible. You call it empathy. But what it really does is hand the remote control of your emotional state to everyone else. A coworker's tone ruins your entire day. A delayed text sends your mind spiraling. A slight change in someone's behavior feels like a personal threat. You're not living, you're performing. And the audience is unpredictable. Machiavelli understood this about people. They are fundamentally self-interested. They will change their loyalty, their tone, even their values the moment they believe it benefits them. People like you as long as you're useful. They tolerate you as long as you're convenient. The second you stop providing value on their terms, that affection fades. If your entire identity is built on being liked, you're building on sand. Respect is built on something else entirely. Respect is built on limits, on lines that cannot be crossed, on the quiet understanding that access to you is not unlimited and not guaranteed. And here's the first brutal shift you have to make if you want real power. You must kill the part of you that needs to be chosen. You choose yourself. There's a basic law of economics that applies perfectly to human behavior. Scarcity creates value. Gold is valuable because it's rare. Air is essential, but you don't pay for it, you don't protect it, and you don't think about it. Why? Because it's everywhere. Most people live like air, always available, always responding immediately, always ready to listen, help, agree, explain. And because they are everywhere, they are valued nowhere. Machiavelli understood the power of distance. He knew that a leader who is too accessible becomes ordinary. Familiarity erodes authority. To be respected, you must learn the art of strategic absence. This doesn't mean disappearing or playing games. It means you stop giving your time, attention, and energy away for free. Stop replying the second your phone lights up. Stop saying yes to plans you dread just to avoid awkwardness. Stop offering your opinion when no one asked for it. When you're always present, there's no space for anticipation, no room for curiosity, no opportunity for people to feel your absence. And it's in that absence, in that psychological vacuum, that respect begins to form. When you pull back, the dynamic shifts. Your time becomes a privilege, not a right. Your attention becomes valuable. People work for what they don't automatically get. If your validation is free, it's worthless. And this is where most people fail. Boundaries. Every time you try to set one, you explain yourself. I can't come tonight because I'm really tired and I have a long day tomorrow. I can't help with that because I've been stressed lately. Stop. Every explanation is an invitation to negotiate. It signals that your no is weak, conditional, and open to pressure. And people will pressure you. They'll solve your excuse, minimize it, work around it. Because you taught them that your boundaries aren't real unless they approve them. A sovereign does not justify his decisions. The most powerful sentences in your vocabulary are complete sentences. No, that doesn't work for me. I'm not available. Notice what comes next. Silence. That silence is where your power lives. It feels heavy, awkward. Your body will want to fill it with nervous chatter. Don't. Let the silence do the work. When you refuse to explain, you communicate finality. You're not asking permission to exist. You're stating a fact. It will feel rude at first. You'll feel mean. But watch what actually happens. People adjust. Because on some level, everyone understands boundaries. They just test the ones that look negotiable. Respect starts the moment you respect yourself enough to stop pleading for understanding. That's the foundation. And it's only the beginning. There's a dangerous misunderstanding about respect that needs to be cleared up right now. Respect is not loud. It's not aggressive. And it has nothing to do with intimidating people. The guy yelling at strangers, picking fights, puffing his chest, that's not power. That's insecurity leaking out through noise. The boss who screams, threatens, and micromanages isn't feared. He's despised, mocked behind closed doors, and quietly undermined at every opportunity. Real respect is calm. It's controlled. It's contained. And it carries an unspoken implication of consequences. Machiavellian power isn't about chaos. It's about discipline. A harmless man isn't a good man. He's just harmless. A good man, a respected man, is someone who is capable of being dangerous but chooses restraint. Someone who has teeth but doesn't need to show them. That quiet implication changes everything. Respect comes from the understanding that if a line is crossed, something will change. Not with drama, not with explosions, but with withdrawal. Most people get this wrong. When a boundary is violated, they react emotionally. They raise their voice. They lecture. They complain. They explain how hurt they feel. And then they stay. That middle ground is where respect goes to die. Because when you complain but don't act, you teach people something very specific. There is no cost to disrespecting you. You're not enforcing boundaries. You're negotiating them. Machiavelli was ruthless about this for a reason. He understood that light punishments invite retaliation, but decisive ones end the problem. Translated into modern life, this doesn't mean cruelty. It means clarity. Either accept behavior as it is, or remove access. No nagging, no emotional speeches, no repeated warnings. If someone repeatedly crosses your line, you don't escalate emotionally. You disengage. You become colder, more distant, less available. The relationship changes, and they feel it. Withdrawal is powerful because attention is currency. When you remove it, people notice immediately. You don't need to shout to be heard. Silence does the work for you. This is why forgiveness without change is not virtue. It's training. If you forgive the same behavior over and over, you are teaching others how to treat you. Respect requires consequences. And that brings us to one of the most uncomfortable truths in power dynamics. Being an open book is a liability. You've been told your whole life that authenticity means expressing everything, that showing your emotions makes you real, that reacting immediately is honest. In social dynamics, that advice is poison. When everyone knows what excites you, what hurts you, what triggers you, you've handed them the blueprint to control you. If flattery works, you're owned. If criticism devastates you, you're owned. Machiavelli advised rulers to be unreadable for a reason. This is the neutral mask. It doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you don't broadcast everything. You receive information, good or bad, without immediate reaction. Someone insults you? Pause. Someone challenges you? Pause. Someone tests you? Pause. Look at them. Say nothing. Let the moment breathe. That pause creates uncertainty. Did you hear them? Are you offended? Are there consequences coming? In that uncertainty, the power shifts. The person who reacts loses control. The person who observes gains it. When you're unreadable, people project their anxieties onto you. They over-explain. They justify. They reveal their intentions while you reveal nothing. You stop being a puppet reacting to strings. You become the one holding the frame. And here's a pill that's hard to swallow, but necessary. Many of the people you are trying desperately to please are not good people. They're not monsters. They're not villains. They're just human, self-interested, inconsistent, opportunistic. Machiavelli described people as ungrateful, fickle, fearful, and driven by advantage. That sounds harsh until you compare it to your own life. How many times have you sacrificed for someone who wouldn't do the same for you? How many times have you burned yourself out to help someone who complained it wasn't enough? When you operate from a need to be liked, you project your own values onto others. You assume generosity will be returned. That loyalty will be mirrored. That empathy will be reciprocated. That assumption is a hallucination. Power begins when you see people as they are, not as you wish they were. This doesn't make you bitter. It makes you strategic. You stop expecting loyalty from people who have never shown it. You stop investing deeply in those who only show up when it benefits them. You stop paying with your soul and accepting counterfeit currency in return. When you accept the reality of human nature, something strange happens. You stop taking things personally. Of course they acted selfishly. Of course they took advantage. Of course they disappeared when you stopped giving. That's not a reflection of your worth. It's information. And information gives you leverage. Which brings us to the nuclear option, the source of all real power. Your willingness to walk away. If you are not willing to leave a situation, you have zero leverage in it. Zero. The person who needs the deal the least always wins. The person who fears loss the least controls the frame. Most people stay trapped in disrespect because they're terrified of the void, of being alone, of losing the familiar, even if it's painful. So they cling, they tolerate, they negotiate their dignity away piece by piece. But a fortress that cannot survive a siege is already fallen. You must build a life that can stand alone, a mind that is rich enough, disciplined enough, and self-contained enough that others are a luxury, not a necessity. When you reach that point, your energy changes. You stop leaning forward, you stop chasing, you sit back. And without saying a word, you communicate something powerful. I want you here, but I don't need you here. That distinction changes how people treat you. Neediness repels. It triggers predatory instincts. Autonomy attracts. It signals strength, stability, and value. When you are no longer afraid of losing people, you stop losing yourself. Now here's another trap people fall into. Confusing usefulness with value. Many try to earn respect by being helpful. They run errands, fix problems, say yes to everything. They think this makes them indispensable. It doesn't. It makes them an appliance. Tools are used until they break, then replaced. Craftsmen are sought out, respected, and compensated because of their skill. Machiavelli valued competence above all else. A leader must bring value, but on his terms. Don't be the person who does everything for everyone. Be the person who does one thing exceptionally well and offers it selectively. Shift from servant to sovereign. A servant waits to be told what to do. A sovereign decides what will be done. When you help, do it from abundance, not obligation. From choice, not guilt. And listen to your resentment. That tight, hot feeling in your chest. That's not weakness. That's your internal warning system telling you you're overextending. Resentment appears when boundaries are violated. Ignore it, and it turns into bitterness. Listen to it, and it becomes guidance. If you choose respect over likability, the crowd around you will thin. The parasites will leave because they can no longer feed. The manipulators will disappear because their strings don't work anymore. The insecure will fade because your strength mirrors their weakness. And for a while, it will be quiet, uncomfortably quiet. You may doubt yourself. You may feel lonely. You may hear that old voice whispering, "Maybe I should just apologize. Maybe I should just be nice." Don't. That silence isn't emptiness, it's space. Solitude is the part no one warns you about. Everyone talks about confidence, boundaries, power, but they skip the moment when the room gets quiet. When the phone stops buzzing. When the people who used to orbit you drift away. That's the phase where most people panic and run back to what's familiar. They mistake silence for failure. Machiavelli didn't. He wrote his most influential ideas in exile. Not in applause, not in approval, in isolation. He understood something most people never learn. Clarity is born when the noise disappears. When you stop performing for others, you finally hear yourself. But first, you have to survive the discomfort. Because solitude forces you to confront a terrifying question. If no one is watching, who are you? For people addicted to being liked, this is unbearable. Their identity was built around reaction, around feedback, around being needed. When that disappears, it feels like death. But it's not death. It's detox. You're withdrawing from external validation. And like any withdrawal, it hurts before it heals. This is where most people sabotage themselves. They reach back out. They over-explain. They apologize for boundaries they already set. They re-enter dynamics that drain them, just to feel normal again. Don't. This phase is where power consolidates. In the absence of constant input, your nervous system resets. You stop reacting to every signal. You stop scanning faces for approval. You start making decisions based on alignment, not anxiety. And slowly, something shifts. Your presence becomes heavier, not louder, heavier. When you speak, there's less fluff, less justification, less urgency. You're no longer trying to convince anyone, you're stating. This is what people mistake for confidence, but it's deeper than that. It's self-containment. A person who can sit alone without collapsing is dangerous in the best possible way. They can't be rushed. They can't be cornered emotionally. They can't be guilted into compliance. They don't need the deal. And because of that, they dictate the terms. Here's another illusion you have to drop. The belief that expressing everything makes you honest. Honesty is not the same as transparency. Transparency is uncontrolled leakage. Honesty is precision. When you reveal everything you think and feel, you're not being brave, you're being predictable. Predictability is easy to manipulate. Machiavelli advised rulers to keep their counsel, not because they were deceitful, but because information is leverage. In modern life, this means learning restraint. You don't need to announce your plans. You don't need to vent every frustration. You don't need to correct every misunderstanding. Silence is not weakness, it's selection. You choose what deserves your energy. And when someone tries to provoke you, when they poke, insult, or test you, don't rush to defend yourself. You pause. That pause is devastating. It forces them to sit with their own words. It makes them question whether they crossed a line. It introduces uncertainty. Uncertainty is power. People fear not knowing where they stand. When they can't read you, they work harder to gain your approval, ironically, the very thing you stopped chasing. This is the paradox Machiavelli understood intuitively. The moment you stop trying to be liked, your value rises. Not with everyone. And that's important. Weak people will resent you. Manipulators will label you cold. Parasites will call you selfish. That's the price. But strong people, secure people, will feel relief. Because boundaries create safety. When people know where you stand, they don't have to guess. They trust you more, not less. They respect you because you're consistent, not compliant. Now let's talk about control, real control. Not dominance, not force. Leverage. Leverage comes from options, from independence, from not needing outcomes to validate your existence. If you cannot walk away from a job, a relationship, or a negotiation, you are already compromised. The fear of loss controls you. That fear leaks into everything you do. It makes you rush. It makes you tolerate disrespect. It makes you accept bad deals just to avoid discomfort. Machiavelli would tell you that dependence is vulnerability. So you build redundancy. You develop skills that travel with you. You build internal resources, discipline, focus, competence that cannot be taken away. You stop tying your self-worth to one person, one role, one group, and something incredible happens. When you no longer need permission to exist, people feel it. You don't ask for space. You take it. You don't chase clarity. You allow ambiguity. You don't beg to be chosen. You choose. That's when the dynamic flips. People start adjusting to you. They mirror your pace. They respect your time. They hesitate before crossing lines. Not because you demanded it, but because you made it costly not to. Cost doesn't mean punishment. It means access changes. You respond slower. You invest less. You pull back without explanation. And here's the key. You do it calmly. No anger, no lectures, no emotional outbursts. Just action. Most people are shocked by this because they're used to emotional resistance, not structural resistance. Emotional resistance can be worn down. Structural resistance cannot. Now let's address something subtle but crucial. Being selective doesn't mean being cruel. It means being intentional. You don't harden your heart. You harden your boundaries. You can be kind without being compliant. You can be calm without being passive. You can be respectful without being self-sacrificial. This is maturity, and it scares people who rely on guilt, chaos, or obligation to maintain control. That's why they'll test you harder at first. They'll push. They'll provoke. They'll accuse you of changing. You have, and that's the point. Don't defend it. Don't justify it. Let the new structure speak for itself. Over time, the testing stops. People either adapt or leave. Both outcomes are wins. Because what replaces the noise is something rare: alignment. Relationships become cleaner. Conversations become simpler. There's less drama because there's less ambiguity. You're no longer trying to manage other people's emotions. You're managing your standards. And standards are power. There's a moment in every transformation where the real test appears. Not when you set your first boundary. Not when you say no without explaining. But when someone tries to pull you back into the old version of you. They'll poke at your emotions. They'll question your intentions. They'll imply you've changed for the worse. And if you're not careful, you'll react, trying to prove you're still good, still kind, still worthy. That reaction is the last chain. This is where emotional discipline becomes non-negotiable. Power isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about controlling expression. Feeling everything but revealing selectively. Most people confuse emotional honesty with emotional exposure. They think being real means showing every reaction in real time. In reality, that's how you give away control. When someone knows exactly how to upset you, they don't need strength to dominate you. They just need timing. This is why the neutral mask matters. The neutral mask isn't coldness. It's containment. It's the ability to experience emotion without letting it dictate your behavior. To absorb pressure without cracking. To listen without immediately responding. When someone challenges you, insults you, or tries to provoke you, your instinct will be to correct them, to defend your reputation, to show them they crossed a line. Pause. That pause does more than any argument ever could. It breaks their script. They expected resistance. They expected emotion. When they get nothing, uncertainty floods in. Uncertainty forces self-reflection. They start wondering, did I misjudge? Did I go too far? Is there something I don't see? And suddenly, the power dynamic has shifted. You didn't win by overpowering them. You won by refusing to play the role they assigned you. This is one of the most difficult skills to develop because it feels unnatural at first. You'll feel exposed, vulnerable, as if you're letting something slide. You're not. You're gathering information. You're observing patterns, tone, intent. And when you do act, it's precise. This is what separates reaction from response. Reaction is immediate, emotional, and predictable. Response is delayed, deliberate, and effective. The observer always has more power than the reactor. Now let's talk about something most people don't want to admit. You don't actually need to show people how much you care. Caring doesn't require performance. In fact, overexpressing emotion often comes from insecurity, not authenticity. It's an attempt to be seen, validated, reassured. But when you constantly display your inner world, you make yourself easy to read and easy to manipulate. Power requires a degree of opacity, not deception. Opacity. You don't lie about who you are. You just don't volunteer unnecessary information. You don't announce your fears. You don't broadcast your plans. You don't expose your wounds to people who haven't earned that access. This isn't closing yourself off. It's protecting your core. And protection is essential if you want to remain untouchable. Because here's the truth. Not everyone deserves access to you. That idea alone offends people who benefit from your openness. They'll call it arrogance, emotional unavailability, ego. Ignore the labels. Boundaries always look like arrogance to those who had unrestricted access before. Now, let's address the fear underneath all of this. The fear of becoming isolated. Many people avoid power because they associate it with loneliness. They imagine standing alone, disconnected, misunderstood. But what they're really afraid of losing is dependency. They're afraid that without constant interaction, reassurance, and approval, they'll disappear. This is the lie that keeps people small. Solitude doesn't erase you. It defines you. When you can stand alone without collapsing, you stop tolerating connections that drain you. You stop confusing proximity with intimacy. Your relationships become fewer, but stronger, cleaner, more honest, more balanced. You're no longer surrounded by people who need you to be less so they can feel more. Instead, you attract people who meet you at eye level, peers, not dependence. And this is where bitterness must be avoided. Many people discover boundaries and swing too far. They harden. They withdraw completely. They become cold not by discipline but by resentment. That's not power. That's armor welded on too tight. True power is flexible. You choose when to open, when to engage, when to give. You're not closed. You're selective. You don't hate people, you understand them. You accept that most human behavior is driven by self-interest, fear, and convenience. And because you accept it, you're no longer shocked by it. Expectation is the root of disappointment. When you drop unrealistic expectations, you regain emotional stability. You stop asking, "Why would they do this to me?" and start asking, "What does this tell me?" That shift alone will change your life. Now let's return to the idea of consequence. Consequences don't have to be dramatic. In fact, subtle consequences are far more effective. You stop over-investing. You stop initiating. You stop prioritizing. You don't announce the shift. You implement it. People feel it immediately. Access decreases. Energy changes. The dynamic recalibrates. Some will correct their behavior. Others will fade away. Again, both outcomes are wins, because your time and attention are finite, and where you invest them determines your reality. This is why emotional discipline is essential. Without it, you'll sabotage yourself the moment pressure appears. Someone will accuse you of being distant. Someone will guilt you for changing. Someone will remind you of who you used to be. And your instinct will be to reassure them. Don't. The old version of you existed to keep the peace. The new version exists to keep the truth. And truth doesn't need constant explanation. Now here's the final trap to avoid in this stage. Moral exhibitionism. You don't need to prove you're right. You don't need to demonstrate how evolved you are. You don't need to correct everyone's behavior. Power doesn't announce itself. It's felt. When you stop reacting, stop oversharing, stop chasing understanding, something subtle happens. People listen more carefully when you speak. They think twice before crossing lines. They value your presence because it's no longer guaranteed, not because you demanded respect, but because you made disrespect inefficient. That's the essence of Machiavellian power in modern life. Not cruelty, not fear, structure. And structure is what allows you to remain calm in situations that used to destabilize you. You're no longer trying to be liked. You're focused on being solid. Here's the paradox most people never see until it's too late. The moment you stop chasing approval, something strange happens. People start leaning in. Not everyone, but the right ones. When you let go of the need to be liked, you stop performing. And when you stop performing, you become real, solid, grounded. In a world addicted to validation and noise, that kind of presence is rare. People feel it immediately. They don't always know why they're drawn to you. They just are. This is the part Machiavelli understood but rarely spelled out plainly. Power doesn't repel connection. Weakness does. When you're desperate to be liked, people sense it. Neediness has a smell. It signals instability. It tells others, on a primal level, that you are dependent, that you can be pressured, that you can be bent. Autonomy does the opposite. When you are self-contained, when your identity doesn't hinge on reaction or approval, you create gravity. People want to be near what is stable, what doesn't ask, what doesn't chase. That's why letting go of approval doesn't make you isolated. It makes you selective. And selectivity is magnetic. Let's be clear about something important. This path is not about becoming cold, antisocial, or detached from humanity. It's about upgrading the quality of your connections. When you stop tolerating disrespect, the crowd thins. That's unavoidable. But what replaces the noise is depth. You stop attracting people who want access without accountability. You stop engaging with those who thrive on chaos and emotional extraction. You make space for people who respect boundaries because they have their own. These are not people who need you to be smaller so they can feel bigger. They want a peer, and peers are rare. This is why the silence you experienced earlier wasn't emptiness. It was filtration. You were clearing out relationships built on convenience, guilt, obligation, and familiarity. What remains, what enters later, is built on choice. Choice is everything. Now let's talk about the final transformation, identity. For most of your life, you were defined externally, by roles, by expectations, by how useful, agreeable, or accommodating you were. When you step into this new way of being, that identity dissolves. And that can be frightening. Because when you're no longer the nice one, the fixer, the reliable one, who are you? You're the one who decides. That's the shift from servant to sovereign. A servant reacts. A sovereign chooses. You no longer live at the mercy of other people's moods, approval, or demands. You operate from standards. Standards are internal. They don't fluctuate based on who's watching. You decide what behavior you tolerate. You decide how accessible you are. You decide where your energy goes. And when someone doesn't meet those standards, you don't rage or plead. You disengage, quietly. This is what makes you untouchable. Not because no one can hurt you, but because no one can control you through fear of loss. You are willing to walk away. And that willingness is everything. Think about how many situations in your life felt suffocating simply because you believed you had no alternatives. Jobs, relationships, friendships, social circles. The moment you believed leaving was impossible, you gave up leverage. Machiavelli would tell you this: the person who can endure loss has power over the one who cannot. When you build a life that can stand alone, a mind that is disciplined, a skill set that travels, a sense of self that isn't outsourced. You are no longer trapped. You don't need to threaten. You don't need to posture. You don't need to explain. Your posture alone communicates strength. This is why true respect often arrives quietly. No applause, no announcements. Just a shift in how people treat you. They listen more carefully. They hesitate before crossing lines. They value your time because they sense it's not unlimited. And here's the final irony. When you stop trying to be liked, people start liking you. Not the shallow, transactional liking you're used to, but a deeper attraction. One rooted in trust. Because when you set boundaries, people feel safe around you. They know where you stand. They know you won't secretly resent them. They know your yes means yes and your no means no. That consistency builds trust. And trust is the foundation of real connection. So the path isn't about becoming harsh. It's about becoming honest. Honest with yourself first. You stop pretending you're okay when you're not. You stop agreeing when you don't mean it. You stop sacrificing yourself for the illusion of harmony. Harmony built on self-erasure is not peace. It's decay. This path requires courage. You will be misunderstood. You will be painted as the villain in someone else's story. Let that happen. You don't need to be the hero in every narrative. You only need to be sovereign in your own. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He knew that clarity often comes at the cost of popularity. That solitude often precedes strength. You are shedding a skin that no longer fits, breaking a mold designed for a smaller version of you. This is the price of elevation. You trade the cheap sugar rush of approval for the solid nutrition of self-respect. And once you taste that, you won't want to go back. So here's the choice, laid bare. You can keep smiling, keep nodding, keep shrinking yourself, hoping one day the world will reward your sacrifice. It won't. Or you can draw a line. You can accept the discomfort. You can let go of the need to be liked. You can build a fortress not of walls, but of standards. You don't demand respect by force. You earn it by being someone who cannot be trampled on. Machiavelli said it plainly. It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. You are the title. Honor yourself first. If you're ready to make that trade, approval for autonomy, likability for respect, assert it. Not in theory, in action. Choose power. Here's the final truth to leave you with. You don't gain respect by demanding it. You gain it by becoming someone who no longer negotiates their worth. When you stop chasing approval, stop explaining yourself, and stop fearing disapproval, you step into a different category. Not louder, not harsher, just grounded. People feel that stability immediately. They sense that you are not for sale, not easily moved, not desperate to be chosen. Some will walk away. Let them. Others will step closer with sincerity, not entitlement. This is the quiet reward of power. You lose the crowd, but you gain yourself. And once you have that, no one can take it from you.